What's up, guys? Welcome back to Bridge to Self. I'm your host, Ben Arthur. So, recently I was at a networking event in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I live. This event was for professionals in tech, AI, content creation, podcasting, digital marketing. And of course, I wanted to go as I have a podcast, want to meet like minded people, connect, put myself out there, right? And I ended up in a really interesting conversation with this one dude. He's a middle-aged white guy, just a regular American. He was asking me like what my podcast was about. I told him it was about the second generation immigrant experience. He was like, "Oh, my wife is actually Ethiopian, and we have a few adult children, and so his kids, although they are mixed race, they are second generation Ethiopian." He continued and was saying like how it was actually him who was hammering on the table for his kids to learn Amharic, which is the primary language in Ethiopia. Wasn't his wife, his Ethiopian wife, pushing for it. It was him as the white guy, and I could just like see it in his facial expressions, mannerisms. He still seemed so confused as to why he was the one like pushing for his kids to be able to like preserve their cultural heritage in that way. And we ended up talking about how like look, like when you are an immigrant, just with coming to a new country, wanting that next generation to have a leg up, be successful, be American, fit in and everything, for better or for worse. Sometimes, not in all cases, but in some cases, language can kind of become an afterthought. And so that kind of brings me to what I wanted to talk about today, how the relationship to language can be so nuanced for second generation immigrants and kind of defines this that whole experience that this podcast is all about. And so I have a really personal relationship to that whole language debate. So for those of you who don't know, my family is from Ghana, both my mom and dad. And so I grew up in a household where I did hear a lot of different languages. So my dad speaks at least like three different Ghanaian dialects, including Twi, which is a primary language in Ghana. My mom's childhood was rooted largely in Fanti, which is another dialect, and so English is the official language of Ghana. So they speak English, but I did hear lots of languages at home, and so. But at the same time, like I don't speak Fanti, I don't speak Twi, I don't speak any Ghanaian dialect. Neither does my sister. And I remember like as a kid at one point asking my parents like why didn't you guys teach us like how to speak the language, and kind of that explanation was like, oh, you wouldn't really use it. And so I don't really blame my parents at for that at all. I mean, they were thinking really from a practical lens, and like any parents, let alone immigrant parents, they wanted to put their kids in the best, what they thought was best for them to be successful. But at the same time, like an unintended consequence of that can be like feeling like disconnected from the cultural heritage. It can show up in feeling lost in conversations that your parents are having with other family members or family friends. It's maybe knowing just a few words. And when you do say those words, relatives kind of joking with you a bit, like about how American and how Western you sound when you say certain words. And like even for like the second gen folks who do know their native tongue really well, they may not understand everything. And so it's looking for context clues, or hearing for the English mixed in to really figure out what's being said. It's the sense of like maybe feeling really tied to your culture in food and in dress and in music, but like language is the one thing where you maybe feel or can feel more isolated than in other regards. And so as a kid, that really played into like my reluctance, the embarrassment even I felt to say the words I knew in the language. Right. Like I can't tell you guys how many situations I was in as a kid where my family, we'd pull up to a Ghanaian party, and we'd be talking to a family friend, and the friend would kind of say something to me in like Chui, for instance, and my parents would kind of encourage me to like respond to them in the language, and I would respond, and there would be those kind of little laughs and giggles about kind of how American I sounded, and I couldn't stand that. I really couldn't stand that, and so like that was the experience with that. But like as I've grown, become an adult, like gotten older and everything, it's just kind of like the understanding of like the need to own that, right? Like my inability to speak Twi or Fanti or Ga, which is another dialect, like my inability to speak those dialects fluently, like that doesn't define like whether I'm Ghanaian or not. Like I know what I am in my experiences. Yes, they are different, but that doesn't take away who I am. And it's like, and like just really learning to own that more, like how I am kind of unique and owning my authentic self. And so really just over time, like learning to lean into that more. So to tie this all up, language doesn't define my belonging or my identity, but it has definitely shaped how I navigate it. And so, and I kind of want to hear from you guys, like how have you guys maybe navigated your family's language? Did you embrace it? Did you struggle with it? Was it maybe somewhere in between? Let me know. You can shoot me an email, bridge2self@gmail.com. That's bridge, the number two self@gmail.com, or on Instagram, bridge to self, or my personal Instagram page, Ben Y Arthur, BenYarthur. Let me know. But anyways, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Appreciate you guys for tapping in as always. And I'll see you guys next time. All right. Peace out.